Welcome back to Project 82, the SCP Remote Access Database. Which case file do you require?
Item number SCP-144. Object class Safe. SCP-144 requires the presence of only one Foundation observer to monitor and issue updates on the condition of SCP-144. The Tibetan Buddhist monks who maintain the site live in solitude and secrecy. A heavy mist condenses around the small mountain that hosts SCP-144, which itself resides in a small valley between two greater mountains, Mount and This mist is present most of the year, and the Din Rope itself is only fairly visible to the human eye within a distance of 3 kilometers. Air travel within a 60-kilometer radius has been restricted with the cooperation of the Chinese government. Located in a monastery atop a small Tibetan mountain, SCP-144 is a thin, taut hempen rope, only 1.2 centimeters thick, attached to a ring of jade bound to the floor of an atrium in the temple, known as Base Camp amongst researchers. The other end of SCP-144 extends straight upward many kilometers up into the sky to a yet-to-be-explored satellite in geostationary orbit above the Earth at an altitude of about 39 kilometers, or 22 miles away, known as the Summit amongst researchers. Several times a year, a monk of the temple ascends up the rope several hundred meters in a ritual of spiritual enlightenment. The monks report that to this day, only one person by the name of has ever been killed during the ascension. Throughout the centuries, several climbers have disappeared, yet the monks believe that one day they will return, bringing greater understanding and enlightenment with them. Carbon dating of rope fibers put SCP-144 at just over 1400 years old. Foundation anthropologists believe that the rope and the tradition of climbing it began within the rituals of an ancient dead religion before Emperor Sonsan Gampu brought Buddhism to Tibet. At that time, it was believed that the rope was several kilometers longer. The attendant monks say that the jade ring was added in the early 9th century by the Ralpakan to keep seasonal winds from picking up the rope and swinging it through the countryside. Several times a year, the head monks untie the rope from the loop of jade and reposition the knot. Research has shown that in recent years, the rope has moved skyward at a rate of about 180 centimeters per year and is slightly accelerating at a rate of 100 of a centimeter per year squared. With only a few hundred meters of rope left, the monks are unsure of what to do when it reaches the end. Some hope to add length by attaching separate sections of rope to the original, while others believe that new rope won't have the strength of the old. Research has been unable to explain how plant fiber rope has been able to survive 1400 years and maintain such tensile strength at such extreme temperatures and conditions of the upper atmosphere and space that people are able to climb it, let alone support its own enormous weight against itself, all 39 kilometers worth of rope. If the summit is accelerating away from Earth, its pull on SCP-144 is also unexplained. The summit has only been properly imaged by ground-based telescopes, which showed a rope of SCP-144 going up and over the edge of a large asteroid-like rock several hundred meters in width. Satellites have been unable to picture the opposite, dark, side of the summit. It has been reasoned that orbiting satellites are designed to image ground-based locations or distant space objects at much greater distances than other neighboring orbital satellites. Researchers disagree about why images of the dark side of the summit return blurry and unfocused, rendering the dark side unknown. Addendum 144-4. Several Class D personnel were offered immediate release if they were to climb to the summit, if possible, and return. While multiple warnings were issued by the monks attending the rope, no resistance was offered. Of the 6 personnel who accepted, 4 returned to base camp complaining of difficulty breathing and lack of air. One slammed into base camp at terminal velocity, presumably after losing his grip from fatigue, and the last has not yet returned.
Case file ends. Which case file do you require?
Item number SCP-146. Object Class Euclid. Containment procedures have been revised after it was noted that the effects of SCP-146 were sharply and dangerously increased under previous containment, a standard 1/2 meter cubed secured storage bin. The bin should remain free, however, should a researcher wish to test SCP-146 at high intensity. Level 3 clearance is required for any personnel wishing to enclose or cover SCP-146 for a period exceeding 2 days. During normal storage, SCP-146 is to be kept on a marble pedestal in its storage room, located SCP-146's standard storage room measures no less than 20 square meters, with stuccoed walls and a ceiling painted to resemble a clear daytime sky. The room is to be kept well lit, full daylight equivalent, at all times, furnished with an assortment of potted plants, which must be tended to daily, and decorated in the style of the late Republican period of Rome, circa 120 to 80 BCE. Experimentation with different interior styles has shown that SCP-146 seems to prefer this arrangement and to have aesthetic preferences consistent with the aristocracy of Rome from that era. While this containment is standard, researchers with clearance level 2 or higher may experiment with different containment settings in order to modify the effects of SCP-146. While SCP-146 is non-motile and therefore requires little security itself, personnel entering its containment area or handling it in any way must not make eye contact with SCP-146. Any attempts to cover SCP-146 in order to prevent eye contact is prohibited, as this has been shown to increase SCP-146's effect at an unpredictable rate. In general, 1 day of covering or confinement will cause SCP-146 to skip over the beginning phase of its effect and to begin with the most traumatic memories. After 3 days, SCP-146 has been shown to produce its effect without having to make direct eye contact first. After 7 days, the effect of SCP-146 is both far more intense and no longer confined to subjects within SCP-146's field of vision. Researchers in an adjacent room were affected and one was permanently. Permission to experiment beyond 7 days is denied by order of O5. Blinders and decorative screens are available for personnel who must enter SCP-146's containment area for maintenance. SCP-146 is a hollow bronze head, apparently a fragment of a complete statue or bust, depicting a crowned young woman or perhaps an effeminate young man. The head exhibits severe verdigris over much of its surface. The crown of SCP-146 is inlaid with silver decorations, and its eyes, the apparent source of SCP-146's effects, are beaten silver, shined to be mildly reflective. To date, SCP-146 has not exhibited any signs of movement, but its reaction to certain decor in its containment area indicates that it may possess a degree of sentience, if not outright sapience. If SCP-146 is able to communicate, it has not yet done so. SCP-146 exhibits the ability to access and bring to mind certain memories in those who initiate eye contact. These memories are usually tied to a sense of guilt or shame in the subject. After initial eye contact is made, the subject need only remain somewhere in SCP-146's field of vision for the memories and associated feelings to become more intense, although continual eye contact speeds the process. Upon initial eye contact with SCP-146, recent memories will begin to surface in the subject. For example, subjects who have ignored a friend in the hall or exceeded the speed limit will be reminded of these events and begin to feel mildly guilty, whether or not they would normally care about the event. With continued exposure to the gaze of SCP-146, the subject will begin to recall older and more vivid memories, with a corresponding increase in feelings of shame in the subject. Generally, after 30 minutes of exposure, the memories will move from being vivid recollections to intense hallucinations, with the subject unable to extinguish the past from the present or the imagined from the real. Subjects have been observed to regress in personality as well, particularly in cases where memories of childhood trauma have been brought up. Any test subjects exposed for over 30 minutes should be restrained both for their own safety and the safety of others. All the subjects to date who have been exposed to SCP-146 for 60 minutes have completely retreated into their hallucinations. So far, no such subject has been restored to a consciousness from this near catatonic state. Such subjects must be fed intravenously and are unresponsive to external stimuli, save for occasional murmurings consistent with their regression. It has also been noted that when subjects recall a shameful event, they will often feel compelled to make amends for their actions. This is not generally a problem in the case of minor offenses and has in some cases led to a greater unity among the staff. However, problems arise when the subject cannot make amends, either because the offended party cannot be contacted or because the transgression is somehow irredeemable. Sometimes the subject will put forth renewed positive efforts in order to balance out their guilt. However, in most such cases, subjects fall into a deep depression and or turn to some form of self-punishment, including self-mutilation and suicide. Please see the attached experiment log for detailed cases. SCP-146 was acquired from a Mr. of Birmingham, UK. Mr. had acquired SCP-146 during the estate sale of a renowned philanthropist, the late Lord of. It was purchased in a lot with a number of other artifacts for pounds. When Mr. began to experience SCP-146's effects, he began seeing a psychiatrist, undercover agent UA33-56G. Mr. was put into an institution and SCP-146 was taken into Foundation custody. UA33-56G's notes on Mr. mental state are available for study by researchers of Level 2 or higher, filed as document SCP-146-A. Experiment Log 146-01. In order to calibrate a baseline for SCP-146's effects, a standard 4x4 meter interrogation room was divided in half by an opaque curtain. SCP-146 was placed on a table inside a protective plexiglass case in one half the room. On the other side of the curtain, subject D044323 was restrained such that he was looking directly at SCP-146's position. Researchers maintained constant communication with the subject via intercom throughout the testing process. The curtain was dropped, causing the subject to look squarely into the eyes of SCP-146. The subject voiced immediate discomfort and closed his eyes, with an increased heart rate of 15 beats per minute. With prompting, the subject related the memories he was recalling, beginning with minor breaches of behavior protocol. The subject then recalled several altercations with other prisoners before his being taken by the Foundation, including a particularly graphic description of. Researchers noted as time went on, the subject became more cooperative and his speech patterns changed, resembling someone undergoing therapeutic hypnosis. After 15 minutes, the subject's speech had become slurred, and his EEG patterns showed similarities to someone experiencing vivid dreams. The subject entered into one half of a dialogue, which culminated in his trying to break his restraints. After several minutes, the subject ceased thrashing and began to cry. The subject started begging, apparently to someone in his hallucination. "Stop. Take it back. Don't. I won't do it again. I'm sorry. I don't want to. Not again. Stop. Please." This behavior continued until, after 54 minutes of exposure to SCP-146, the subject's vocalizations halted and his EEG showed signs consistent with a coma. After an hour, no further effects were observed, and the subject was removed and euthanized. Post-mortem examination of his brain noted abnormal levels of and which neuropathologist Dr. described as indicative of. Note: at this point, SCP-146 was being kept along with the other artifacts purchased at auction because it was not yet known that the effect was confined to SCP-146 alone. I theorize that this containment approximated favorable containment, and therefore kept SCP-146's effect at its base strength. Professor Scully. Experiment Log 146-04. The first experiment conducted after it was determined that SCP-146 consisted only of the bronze head took place after SCP-146 had been moved to a standard 1/2 meter cubed storage bin where it had remained for 2 days. Subject D044784 and SCP-146 were placed on opposite sides of a curtain in a standard interrogation room as in previous experiments. The subject was restrained as in previous experiments. When the curtain dropped, the subject reported an immediate headache and began to cry. The subject's heart rate jumped to 180 beats per minute, but then dropped rapidly to 40 beats per minute, and the subject lost consciousness. Medical personnel entered the room and began examining the subject, at which time the subject regained consciousness, her heart rate spiking to 175 beats per minute. The subject struggled violently against her restraints, and was soon able to break the restraint on her right arm, severely damaging her own arm and hand in the process. Paramedic D was injured as the subject struck him in order to gain access to his first aid kit. The subject was able to grab a small scalpel and jam it into her own neck before guards could regain control. Medical staff administered first aid, but the subject died during emergency surgery due to blood loss. Note: after several similar incidents, it was determined that SCP-146's ability was affected by its containment. Anyone wishing to do further research must take this into account, as even brief accidental exposure could prove harmful. Professor Scully.
Thank you for your participation in Project 82, transmitting psioanalytic data to Dr.